Welcome back to another episode of the MacRumors Show. Super sorry about the last couple of weeks. Things beyond my control, some personal stuff, but we are happy to be back. Hartley, last day in paradise for you, but I know you're looking forward to getting back home, but at least we got to do one episode. You look like you got some color. You look good.
Thank you. Yeah, well, I did get horrifically sunburned on my first day here. So I'm glad it's only just now starting to look vaguely human.
No, it looks good. Nice little bronze to you. And speaking of bronze, probably one of my best segues I've ever had. Apparently, the new we're just going to jump right into the news. We've missed a lot over the last couple of weeks. The new iPhone 16 coming out in just a few weeks. We have heard that there is a new bronze-like color, and apparently it's going to be called Desert Titanium. And now we have a concept render up on our website. You can go check it out, macrumors.com, obviously. But I, for one, if it's going to look like that, I kind of like it. I am curious to hear your thoughts. I know we've been like color police over the last few years with different colors for products. And while bronze or a different shade of gold would not be my first choice for a new Pro color, I just looking at it, I don't hate it. It might be the one I would go with, honestly. I actually kind of like it. What do you think?
I feel like the iPhone's gold color option is always either the color to get or the color to stay away from, but never anywhere in between. So when it was first introduced, I think it was on the iPhone 5S, and it looked really good. But on something like the iPhone 6, it looked terrible. Particularly when we used to have the white bezels on the front. It did not look fantastic a lot of the time. But then moving a little further forward on something like the iPhone XS, which reintroduced that gold color option, because of course prior to that we only had the iPhone X, which was only available in silver and space gray. I think that was more of a bronzy color, and it looks like this is kind of what we're going back to. But of course we haven't really had this sort of bronzy color with the titanium finish before, and we haven't had it with this squared off design. So it will be quite different. I imagine this will be the color that a lot of people go for this year, and I'm glad that it's not just a normal gold. I think that would have been a missed opportunity. I know that it's not maybe the burnt orange that you were hoping for, but I still think it's probably a bit better than a rose gold that we thought we were going to get for a little while, which I think would have been a little bit mundane, or just a flat gold. I think the kind of darker, more industrial look of a sort of bronzy gold, it's a little bit sandy. That's why supposedly it's going to be called Desert Titanium. I think that's probably one of the better options that Apple could have opted for this year. So I'm interested to see what it looks like, because it's always, color options are always in the rumor mill so hard to really tell what they look like, because on dummy models that come out, any rumors about it, we may get the name, we may get a vague idea on some plastic model, but it's going to look completely different when it's actually using the materials on the device itself. And even in the marketing materials, sometimes at first it's a little bit hard to tell. Space gray has always tended to look darker in images than it does in person. So when we actually have our hands on these devices in a few weeks from now, it will be interesting to see.
Well, remember the iPad Air this past year, all those colors, like I think they looked better in the marketing materials. They were a little more vibrant and dark, and then you saw them in person, you're like, I can't tell. They all look like different shades of gray. That's why I'm like kind of reserving any kind of hope right now. I don't want to make any definitive statements, obviously, on which color I'm going to get, but I am worried that it looks good in the concept renders, but those are just people's renders and thoughts based on the information, but it's not going to look one for one. So maybe don't go and look at it, or if you do, just have the same kind of hesitation that it's probably not going to look as good, or if you think it looks bad, it might not look as bad. So we'll just have to see in just a few weeks. And speaking of just a few weeks, we should be getting invites probably end of next week, right? We should be hearing about
Probably. It looks like the most likely date will be for the event will be Tuesday, 10th of September. Apple's
Yeah.
always gone usually for the second Tuesday in September,
Yeah.
and then launching a week after that. So go on sale the following Friday and then launch a week from that. So if that's the case, we should be getting invites fairly soon. And it should be a fairly busy event because we've got not only have we got the iPhone 16 and 16 Pro, but we're also expecting some other devices like new AirPods as well.
Yeah, another fantastic. Man, we're just killing the Segway game today. Let's talk about those AirPods 4 this year in two variants. So looks like there's going to be the normal one, kind of an update, refresh to what I'm currently wearing right now, and then another model that's going to be a little bit higher end, but same design and everything. But it'll have ANC, which is like the first time that it's not actually put into a Pro AirPods Pro style pair of headphones. So that's pretty nice. If people don't like, I don't want to take it out right now, but if you don't like the ear tips that come with the AirPods Pro and you really like the way the AirPods 3 feel, but you kind of just wish it had some noise cancellation, then this could be a fantastic option. And honestly, I might be one of those people. Like I like my AirPods Pro, but I'm not particularly crazy about the fit with the ear tips going directly into my ear canal and sometimes just causing fatigue faster. Like I can wear these for a lot longer. And if it has ANC, I'm pretty much sold on that being the ones that I'll use for the most part. What do you think?
And of course, Samsung has just released earbuds with effectively the same idea, with no silicon ear tips, but still having ANC.
Mm-hmm.
I think the really interesting thing about this is a complete change for the AirPods lineup. So right now, and this has been the case for many years at this point, if you want to buy in-ear AirPods as opposed to over-ear, you have three options. You can go for the AirPods 2, the AirPods 3, or the AirPods Pro. But what seems to have happened is that overwhelmingly people choose the AirPods Pro, or they choose the entry-level AirPods, which are strictly speaking the AirPods 2.
Yeah.
So the middle, which is the AirPods 3, which came out in 2021 now, so that's a long time ago, has been kind of squeezed out. So what Apple is going to try and do with the AirPods 4 in providing two options is replace both the AirPods 2 and the AirPods 3. So hitting both of those price points, but with a new model on both accounts, and providing some of those pro features like active noise cancellation, but also probably, I'm guessing, the Find My enabled MagSafe charging case, just so that it justifies that extra cost. So that it also has the speaker and the lanyard loop and just a couple of little extra features to justify the extra $50 or whatever it may be. That way, it's a little bit clearer for users. So it's kind of like AirPods Pro Lite minus the ear tips, which should appeal to a lot of people. And I am imagining that the actual underlying reason for this that hasn't really been talked about in the rumor community yet is this would enable Apple to push up the price of the AirPods Pro with the next version, because the next generation AirPods Pro coming next year are expected to have cameras for Vision Pro. That is probably going to cost more money. And it may also have some health features, as has been rumored for years. If that's the case, I don't think these are going to continue to be $250. I think they're going to be $300. So I can imagine an AirPods lineup where at maybe $130 you have the low-end AirPods 4. Maybe at about $200 you have the high-end AirPods 4. And then at $300 you have the AirPods Pro.
That's tough.
3?
Yeah, whatever you want to call them. That's a tough price point, considering that like the other competitors, like the Samsung ones that you just mentioned, those are around $179. And I just reviewed a pair of the OnePlus buds. Now, I understand that people that are heavily invested, probably the ones listening in the show, are like not going to be even remotely thinking about getting others. But there are other really good earbuds out there, and they're being made by these other Android, competitors. And I just recently posted a video like a few days ago on the OnePlus. God, all these names. OnePlus Buds Pro 3. And those sound incredible for what they are. Like they were really good, better than the AirPods Pro in my opinion. They started at 179. Very similar design. You know, they're pretty much all just copying the AirPods Pro formula at this point. Stems, squeeze gestures, all of that. But they just sound really good, and they actually do play really nicely with iOS. I do also want to mention for those who do watch that video, I did say that there's no app. There is an app. For some reason, it's not OnePlus branded, and it wasn't in any of the marketing review materials that they gave me, so I had no idea. So there are some people who pointed out that there is an app that works for other like Oppo devices that work for this, and I did test it out, and there are like ways to kind of customize the EQ and stuff, so it gets even better. Which, again, want to bring this out. Do you think with the pros for next year or whenever those do come out, do you more and more of these companies are adding in like EQ as a way to kind of justify the higher price tags and just making it more of a pro feature? Do you think we'll ever see that with AirPods?
It's possible. I really don't think it's easy to say. I mean, it to me seems bizarre that they're adding cameras to a device as popular as the AirPods Pro for a device that is as unpopular as Vision Pro.
Right.
So whether they add an equalizer feature, I think it's really impossible to say, because
Yeah.
that just
Who
seems
knows?
like a really radical thing to do to me.
What, the
I think
EQ or
AirPods
the
Pro,
cameras?
the cameras, and so
I was
it just
gonna
means
say.
that it means that they. I think Apple's approach to the AirPods Pro has become completely unpredictable,
Yeah.
especially with rumors of adding health features. What will they be? What will the effect on battery life be? And that's why I guess the AirPods Pro, the AirPods 4 are stepping up a little bit in terms of feature set. I wouldn't even be that shocked if the AirPods 4, the high-end version, you could choose whether to have silicone tips on them or not. So they would effectively be AirPods Pro in all but name.
Now, when you talk about AirPods Pro with the cameras, are you saying for the current version or to supplement the lighter version that would be coming out in the future that might have some cameras removed? That would be my first initial thought. Or is this to just make what we already have even better, or is it just unclear?
It's not clear, but what's
Yeah.
clear is that they do seem to be doing it because this is now moving in the supply chain. So this is not this is not a rumor that is unfounded. This is from a fairly reliable source, someone that we've got a lot of information from over the years, which is Ming-Chi Kuo. And these components have been
So
ordered
weird.
from suppliers. So
Yeah.
we are expecting infrared cameras, one in each earbud facing outward, which should provide a larger field of view for not in terms of what you would see in a Vision Pro, but in terms of what Vision Pro is able to capture of your environment to be able to understand what's around you. How that actually makes the experience of using Vision Pro better, I don't know. And how you can justify that in a product that is so popular. I mean, AirPods are almost as popular as the iPhone now. They're almost as ubiquitous as the iPhone. And yet you're putting a significant feature there for Vision Pro. I mean, I guess
Yeah.
maybe that's the idea, that people think that it might push people toward buying a Vision Pro, but it's not going to do that for me.
Yeah, I forgot. I think it was the last time we spoke. It's honestly been so long. Was that when you returned your Vision Pro?
Yeah, I am
It's
no
still,
longer a Vision Pro owner.
it still hurts me inside to hear that.
But you know, the thing is, I have no regrets. I sent it back. I was a little bit sad that I wouldn't be able to pick it up and use it anymore. I haven't even thought about it once.
Well, you've been living your best life in a different area, so
Yeah, but I still had like a week before I left.
you could have
And
used it on that 14-hour flight.
I could have, and also I was, when I initially bought the Vision Pro, I was expecting to use it over this period when I've been in Miami to work. I wanted to work in it every day, but actually, I've just been working every day on my MacBook Pro, and it has been
Yeah.
fine. And I actually can't think of anything worse than having that strapped to my head, causing
Yeah.
me pain on my cheekbones, pain on my forehead, my eyes getting fatigued. I just don't need that in my life right now. I want to come back to it. It is great for some kinds of content consumption. The immersive video is fantastic. The spatialized photos are fantastic. Mac mirroring was kind of handy in certain instances, but it is it is a nice to have toy. It is not a professional machine. And I will return to it maybe in the next iteration.
Okay, we'll have to hold you to it. All right, so yeah, we kind of jumped around with AirPods. We were talking about AirPods 4 and AirPods Pro 3, whatever we're going to call them. But really, the main story is that this year we want to focus on some of the things that are going to be happening for the rest of the year. AirPods 4 looks like it's going to be those two variants, and it's going to be basically a higher end model with ANC and transparency. And then, right, we will be getting, I'm guessing ANC and transparency are just coupled together, obviously.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I don't know. Gosh, they put A and C, but no transparency in there for the sake of justifying. I'm not surprised by anything these days. Another thing that could be coming this year is the M4. There's going to be a lot of M4 computers. Obviously, we had a report that those are going to start to be getting refreshed with the M4 chip. But the M4 Mac Mini. So the Mac Mini hasn't been touched in what seems like forever now. I think it's still running the M2 Pro.
It's got the M2 and the M2 Pro, but the actual design of the Mac Mini has been the same since Steve Jobs was CEO.
And that's where I'm getting at. Is it iconic? Is it too iconic to change? Or are you happy with the reports that now it looks like it's going to become the smallest ever computer and it's going to have a complete redesign? What do you think that's going to look like, and what are your thoughts?
So it's supposedly going to move toward being a little bit more like the Apple TV. So it will get a little bit taller than the current model.
Interesting.
But it's going to shrink significantly. Now, this makes a lot of sense because I don't know if you remember seeing the teardowns for the Apple Silicon Mac Mini, even further back when there was the A12Z developer kit, which was the first Apple Silicon Mac that developers had their hands on. And obviously subsequently with the M2 and the M2 Pro models. Almost all of the Mac Mini chassis for these devices is empty. It is hollow. Yeah. This device was designed for Intel chips 14 years ago, when you had big sticks of RAM in there and loads of stuff that's just not present in the device anymore, or has been downsized so significantly that it just doesn't matter. I mean, let's also remember that the thermal requirements of the Mac Mini 14 years ago were completely different. Now, the M2 chip and the M1 chip, these have been in fanless MacBook Airs. They don't have anywhere near the same requirements. And also, even in terms of power supply, the Mac Mini has a large power supply built into it. That is also not necessary in the same way because of the incredibly low power requirements of these chips. So it is long overdue to have some sort of redesign. I don't think it's going to set the world on fire. It's a nice to have, and it is probably about time, more than perhaps any other Apple device, just because of how long this design has stuck around. I actually can't think of another Apple computing device, whether that's an iPhone or an iPad or a Mac, that has had the same design stick around for as long as this one. I think it is quite incredible to just think about how long a Mac that looks identical to the one that is currently in the Apple Store has been around. So what would it have been? The iPhone 4 was on sale next to this machine. And that is still in Apple stores.
Yeah, that's pretty
effectively
insane
in terms of how it looks.
How do you feel about the quote about this device that says it's apparently, people who have been working on this device say that it's essentially an iPad Pro inside of a tiny box? How do you feel about that?
I mean, I suppose for all intents and purposes, that's really what the Apple Silicon Mac Mini has been so far. It's just now it's getting even tinier. It doesn't look like there'll really be many other changes. One of them looks like there will be another USB-C port on the back for a total of 3, although it depends which configuration you buy. So I don't quite know how that will work out, because right now, if you get the M2 model, you've got 2 ports as far as I know. I hope I'm not wrong about this. This is right off the top of my head. But if you get the M2 Pro model, you get 4 ports. Or at least that used to be the case with the low-end and high-end Mac Minis. Now it looks like there will be 3. So I don't know if that's going to be 3 across the lineup, or the other thing to bear in mind is that the Mac Mini also is one of the last remaining Macs that has USB-A ports. So
which have come in handy for me, honestly. I'm using a Mac
Yeah.
Mini for this. I use it to run this show, and honestly, it's nice to have the USB-A ports because I'm taking up all of the USB-C with other things, and so I don't know. I
So it would be nice to have.
Yeah.
Um, I think they've just got to keep the Mac Mini around ultimately. There are plenty of people that don't need a Mac Studio. I think the M2 Pro Mac Mini, what we talked about largely when that device came out was just how powerful it was and how useful it was, and how a lot of Mac Studio users probably, if you're a creative without extremely intense workflows, you can make do with a Mac Mini absolutely fine. So if you look at this as more like a Mac Studio Junior for creatives, or uh, anyone that wants to be able to plug in their own monitor, um, why not? I mean, let's also remember that the iMac is only available in 24 inches and is only
Hmm.
available with an entry-level chip. So if you need something less powerful than a Mac Studio, but more powerful than an iMac, and you want a larger display than an iMac, well, the way to go is still to get a Studio display and a Mac Mini. So even better if the Mac Mini just gets this nice little redesign. I think it will look a little bit weird when we first see this, and it's just this tiny little square like an Apple
Yeah,
TV
like
underneath
an Apple
a
TV.
Studio display.
Why don't we just
But
combine? Let's just combine the Apple TV and the Mac Mini together. You want to watch Apple TV? You want to switch? I mean, Apple TVs are really prevalent in conference rooms. Imagine if you can switch over and it becomes your PC. Sorry, excuse me. One thing I want to point out about that: remember when the Mac Mini used to have the Apple TV like remote that would control it,
yeah.
which is wild. Let's just bring that back too. Might as well just go full circle. I think I still have one of
I,
those remotes at my house.
I love all that kind of thing. I used to love all of
Yeah.
the way that the whole sort of iTunes ecosystem used to feel, with like the iPod speaker and all of this stuff.
Yeah.
It was so nostalgic. The iPod socks, bring all this back.
I want to say it was pointless to have that remote, but honestly, the way I had my first computer was a Mac Mini in high school, like my first Mac. And I had that like kind of in one corner of my room. And you laugh at why would you need a remote? But honestly, that's how I would control music from like across the room. Or if I was in the shower, like next to it, like I could still hear my speakers. I'd just take the remote with me. And yeah, it did have a use case. Now, obviously, we can use our phones for everything. So that kind of another
Or
thing
Siri.
phones have taken away, or Siri. Yeah. Um, so we're expecting that this year. Do you think that's going to be kind of later on, more like Q4 with the rest of the M4 Max?
Probably. There are quite a few devices now that look like they are highly likely to come out this year. So, firstly, with the Mac lineup, we are expecting, obviously, the M4 and M4 Pro Mac Minis. We are
Yep.
also expecting M4 Pro and M4 Max MacBook Pros. Just a minor refresh. It looks like the only thing that will be different is the chips, like it's been for the previous two generations. The other M4 updates, so things like the iMac, the MacBook Air, those look like those are coming early next year. So there are a couple of Macs in play for this year. We are also still expecting some new iPads. We are expecting a minor iPad mini refresh to add a newer chip, maybe to bump the camera specs a little bit, and also the entry-level iPad. So I guess this will be the iPad 11th generation. That also is due to get a chip update, because right now that has the A14. So it would make sense to move that up to the A15, and then to move the iPad mini to the A17. So that also has support for Apple Intelligence going forward. So
One
it could
question.
even
One
move to the
question on the
A18
iPad Mini.
theoretically.
Yeah. One question on the iPad Mini. Do you think the landscape camera appears, since all the other iPads now have a landscape camera?
I don't actually know, because I think it's the one iPad where
it's
you
small.
actually largely use it in portrait. You're not docking it. So every other iPad has some sort of keyboard accessory where you probably could make a FaceTime call once it's docked in that device. And even the entry-level iPad has that. I mean, that was the iPad that moved to having the camera in that orientation first, because you had the Magic Keyboard Folio alongside it. with the iPad mini, there is no keyboard. There isn't even a smart connector. I wonder how many people who use the iPad mini, and if they're not playing a game or watching a movie, how many people actually use it in landscape. I think a lot of people use it in portrait. And I think, considering this is only a minor refresh, it probably will stay where it is for now, which I think probably is the right place for it.
If you're an iPad mini user, let us know. Would love to know your use case if you use it in landscape or portrait a lot. I'm guessing Hartley's right as well. But I mean, for consistency's sake, that's going to bother me that every iPad in the lineup has a landscape camera now, and then this one's going to be the one that doesn't. Just then you go to pick up one, you're like, oh, okay, it's kind of not a big deal. Even if it does change, it's really not a big deal. It's pretty much the same form factor no matter how you hold it. So I mean, you're just holding it in a different way if you have to. But yeah. So that's the M4 stuff that's coming along.
Yeah,
I'm curious.
For closing out the year, we've got 2 iPhones, 2 sets of AirPods, 2 Macs, and 2 iPads. So that potentially is 2 events. I'm guessing that we. Oh, and of course, we're forgetting something quite important, which is the Apple Watch. And actually, there should be 3 Apple Watches.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing that we will get a September event where we get the iPhone 16, the iPhone 16 Plus, the iPhone 16 Pro, the iPhone 16 Pro Max, the Apple Watch Series 10, the Apple Watch Ultra 3, and the Apple Watch SE 3. And maybe the AirPods, but it wouldn't surprise me if then AirPods get moved to October, and then in October we get the 2 sets of AirPods 4, we get the iPad 11, we get the iPad mini refresh, we get new MacBook Pros, and we get the redesigned Mac mini. And I think that's probably about right for this year.
See, I wonder what Apple's like mindset is for planning when and what products go together. Like Apple Watch, iPhone, those two have to go together. That just makes sense. You really, I mean, you can use one without the other, but they're meant to be used together. And honestly, for AirPods, that was kind of the case too. They were meant to be used together, but now AirPods can be used with anything. So I can understand that they have wiggle room, but I feel like iPhone, Apple Watch, AirPods makes sense.
And a lot of AirPods have come out alongside the iPhone. I mean, the AirPods were introduced alongside the iPhone. Even when the AirPods 3 came out, that was also alongside what would have been the iPhone 13.
Yeah.
So it's an iPhone accessory. It's considered an accessory, so it probably will come alongside that, and then iPad and Mac toward the end of the year. But I don't know. I think that other than the Mac Mini, there's not a huge amount that would be particularly exciting at that event. It would just be chips.
So
refreshes.
Okay. So then do that. Keep the AirPods with the Max to make it a little bit more exciting and interesting. What about the AirPods Max?
Oh yeah, we are expecting a refresh to the AirPods Max this year.
So that's starting to become too much then if you do iPhone, Watch, AirPods with 2 new versions of the AirPods 3, and then, here's the AirPods Max. Although it's probably just going to be a spec bump, unfortunately, or not even a spec bump, but just a few minor changes, and then the USB-C.
New color options in USB-C, and that is it.
That is a bummer. So maybe you could do it, and it doesn't matter. But I mean,
the wild card. There's 2 wild cards, I would say, which is a Apple TV refresh. We've been expecting that since the first half of this year. I mean, the Apple TV already has the A15. I don't think it really needs a chip refresh right now, but apparently one is coming. So that could also be in an October event. And I think it is not out of the question that we will see the iPhone SE4 this year. Now, whether that is at the September event, whether that is at the October event, or whether that is, as I actually expect it will be, maybe in a press release in December, it looks like the iPhone SE4 is coming out sooner than the previous few iPhone SE models.
See, that's interesting because that's a pretty big refresh to the iPhone SE. It's going to be the first time it's ever been, the second time it's ever been redesigned. Because the first body was more of that square iPhone 4.
Yeah, it was the iPhone 5S, basically.
Yeah, basically. But I mean, it's been many years since it's been changed in terms of design. So that's a pretty big refresh. I would be shocked if it gets held to a press release. But
Well, sometimes, I mean, the AirPods Max were unveiled in a press release. The AirPods Pro
sure,
were
sure.
unveiled in a press release. So
There's really
sometimes
no
these things
like
are weird.
yeah, there's really no rhyme or reason as to what they do, which is, we try to sit here and predict it, but ultimately only Apple execs and marketing knows what's going to happen when. And even then, who knows if they actually have a solid idea at this point. I wonder if the iPhone SE could be held if, for later in the year after the event coming out here in a couple weeks, maybe poor sales for the iPhone 16, 16 Pro. People are not upgrading as much. Price is too expensive. You drop this, you know, similar idea to what you're getting with some of the more modern phones over the last few years. And then people are like, hey, this is $499, $497, whatever the price is. Might just do that instead. And then you see a surge in some iPhone sales to close out the year. I wouldn't be surprised by that. But yeah, next month is going to be interesting. It could be really just run of the mill, par for the course. Here are your iPhones, your Apple Watches, potentially AirPods, but really just those two, and then that's it. Or there could be a lot of random, surprises that could happen sooner than later, like you said.
Yeah, pretty much. I think the
Yeah.
iPhone SE4 is really the one to watch right now because that could be very popular going into the holidays, particularly a device like this. I mean, I think that this is going to be the most popular iPhone for years. I think this is going to eat into the sales of the iPhone 16 massively because you will
Well,
have a device
Apple
that is
Intelligence.
effectively 500 Apple Intelligence, around $500 or less.
Yeah.
The action button, USB-C, Face ID, OLED, 6.1-inch display. What more could you want? MagSafe. It's all there. It's everything that the average person needs. It's even going to probably have the 48 megapixel camera. So
that's the phone. I mean, that's the one to recommend to people.
Yeah, and I think it's going to fly off shelves. I think it's going to be stupidly popular.
That's why I'm saying it's a good idea to maybe do it a month or two after iPhone sales happen. See where you're at. Like if you need a boost, for the board and the investors, if you want a boost, this is a good way to get some end of year profit if you're going to have a stupid surge like that with the iPhone SE. One thing I do want to point out is that we talked about this could be a phone at that price point that gets Apple Intelligence. It's going to be one of the only ones that's going to be at that price point with that feature. And some of the rumors now about Apple Intelligence have me a little worried here. Did you see that it could be $20 per month in the future for some of these services, basically turning Apple Intelligence into a subscription? I do not love that. I do not like that at all. What do you think?
Well, I don't love it. And we're some time away from that. My guess is that is going to be a direct ChatGPT competitor. Because right now, ChatGPT charges a subscription fee. Apple Intelligence plugs into ChatGPT as it presumably will plug into other AI services. And we know that Apple is working on its own direct rival that is actually like a chat interface that you can interact with. Nothing in Apple Intelligence right now behaves like that. So it makes sense if ultimately 2 years from now, Apple says, well, you can have ChatGPT over here if you want to for $20 a month or whatever it costs. Or you can have Apple GPT for $20 a month.
This is where I get a little worried, though.
I mean, if competitors are charging for it, I can see Apple charging for it as well. I don't think they're going to charge for these kinds of features because what they have presented here is the framework that other AI technologies can plug into. When Apple provides that part for free, it makes sense that when you want to plug other stuff into that, whatever that may be, even if further in the future, what if that is AI video editing tools for Final Cut, and that is available as a subscription, then you plug that into Apple Intelligence. There will be ways to monetize that in the future. It's just a little bit too early.
I just don't love that. Like, I know that there are services and apps that require subscriptions. Lots of things require subscriptions, but when you start advertising these phones to have this core major new feature, and then you have to spend $1,000+ to get that. As of right now, obviously the iPhone SE is not out yet, but if that does have it, great. You have to charge a premium to get these phones in order to do it, and then you are charging extra per month to be able to use those features. It's like, where does it stop? Or at some point, they could just do iMessage as a subscription service and say, well, you got to get this phone, and now you got to pay us $3 a month to use the the framework for the security and the encryption and getting your blue bubbles. Otherwise, we'll revert you to RCS, and you'll just use that from now on. It's like, that's possibility, and I just get nervous that like this is going to be a stepping stone for new features, especially all of these AI features, to become a subscription. Now, you don't have to use it. That's the beauty of the world that we live in for the most part. Most people have freedom, especially when it comes to these things. You don't have to use it. I probably would never pay for something like that, especially if it wasn't my job. I just don't use it all the time, but some of the stuff is super helpful, especially when we start getting writing tool. And I'm not saying that that's the stuff that's going to be used, but let's just say Apple Intelligence as a whole becomes $20 a month. Like, some of those features that you get are useful, and if it's on your Mac and you use that specifically more than you would on your phone, like, that's just, I don't know, too many subscriptions these days. It just reminds me of everyone I talk to, people have a million subscriptions that they pay for because they were like cutting the cord. It's cheaper than cable. And now I'm like, I might just sign back up for cable because I can get everything and it's less expensive. We're like imploding on these subscriptions, and it at some point just needs to stop. But I don't know. It's a whole dark path.
I do agree. I think it's all about moderation. Right now, I don't think anyone expects things like Apple Music or Apple TV to be free, because you're getting something in exchange for that. If Apple Intelligence ends up being the same thing, where what you are paying for is an additional service where you actually feel you are getting something in return for that, then I think that I'm okay with that.
Sure.
Even better if I can roll it into Apple One. Maybe I won't even notice it. Maybe it'll just be free, another thing rolled into my Apple One subscription.
And that's how they make you feel comfortable about it, and that's fine. And I'm not upset about like if the Chat GPT style version of Apple Intelligence becomes, like you said, it's already something that others offer as a subscription. I'm okay with that. I just want to know, well, where does this end, and could this snowball into other things that are really useful that people want, that they can just be like, well, now everything is going to be an Apple One thing, or you're going to have to pay a one-off, and then it just becomes like, well, what am I getting out of my $1,000 phone if everything that I'm buying it for becomes a subscription? Last thing I want to get your thoughts on the new Pixel. I know you're out in Miami partying it up, having a good time, but have you had a chance to see the new Pixel 9, the 9 Pro, the 9 Pro Fold? Well, I don't know why they renamed it to add to it's a whole other thing, but there were some talks yesterday about the Pixel came out for everybody. The Pixel Studio, which is very reminiscent of the playground, the image playground, or whatever that we will get soon with Apple Intelligence. People were able to get some pretty offensive images created. Now, it seems as if Google was able to kind of nip that pretty quickly, because I got my device yesterday, actually, and I was not able to recreate some of these horrific images. But I don't know how a big company like that lets that go through for anyone before a release. Like, I'm not expecting Apple to get that far or even remotely have something like that happen. But what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that Apple tends to be far slower with introducing any of these features, but it's also worth bearing in mind that Google is way further ahead with AI. So this kind of stuff will happen, especially when you consider that you have to remember these things are not being made by people. These are being automatically generated, and AI will hallucinate. It's inevitable. Even Apple Intelligence will hallucinate.
Yeah.
So it's just the way it works with AI. But in terms of the devices themselves, I think they're beautifully designed. I think they're the best looking devices that Google has ever made by
That's
far.
because they look like iPhones.
they do kind of look like iPhones.
They do. I don't have
but
mine on me. It's over there, but like it's
they
honestly,
do look really good.
But yeah, they do. I love the hardware. It feels really good. I don't love going back to stainless steel because like I am so invested in the titanium now. This is the way to go. That the stainless steel shine kind of threw me off a little bit. And I'm like, fingerprints. But no, they feel great. They look great. They finally feel like premium flagship phones. And like I've always loved Pixels, but it was mostly for the software. And now the hardware is finally caught up. And it's worth that price tag because you feel like you are actually getting the iPhone of Android. It is directly made for that Google experience, like Apple makes their phones to give you that Apple experience. And finally, the hardware feels premium enough. But it's not without mentioning that it's probably because it appeals to you because it really does look and feel like an iPhone, minus that giant. What do you think of that visor of cameras?
I quite like it. I think it's
I
a
do too.
decent solution. Just embrace it. Embrace it.
It kind of gives like a little like stability to the wobble. You're still going to get like an uneven, it's not going to be flat obviously, but at least there's no wobble when you touch your phone because it's pretty much flush and, parallel across the back of the phone. So yeah, I have not tested much yet. Literally just got it the other day, but if you guys are curious, we'll have a little comparison video between probably the 15 Pro Max and then eventually when the 16 Pro Max comes out, we'll do something with that as well. Is there anything else you want to leave us with before we head off into what I guess iPhone 16 talk will probably be ramping up here in the next couple of weeks?
Yeah. I think that's it for now. Just waiting for event invites and then roll on iPhone 16 lineup.
Will you move to Miami? Yes or no?
I would quite like to. Whether I will, I don't know.
Okay.
But if any of our listeners would like to support that move, I'd be very happy to embrace it.
Did you just ask them for money? If anybody would like to send Hartley money so he could move, hell, I'll move to Miami. I mean, I have more family to bring with me, but yeah, well, it's nicer weather.
Let's just move all of MacRumors to Miami.
Sure.
We can work from the beach. Why not?
Yeah, that sounds fantastic. Arn, if you're listening, that's what we're going to do. We'll catch everybody in the next episode. Again, we're back rolling now. It's good to be back. And thanks for everyone for all the kind words and everything. I do appreciate everyone reaching out to me. And yeah, catch everybody next week.